This is Dr. Warren Vander Hill interviewing Dr. John Reno, Emeritus Chair of the School of Physical Education and Professor of Physical Education for the Ball State History Project, October 13, 2004. John, I really appreciate your helping me with my project, and I guess I'd like to begin at the beginning and have you talk a little bit about your educational background, where you're from, where you got your degrees, and then we'll eventually segue to your coming here.
Well, Southern Illinois is our home, and when I say our home, my wife and I, a unique relationship in that we were both born the same day at the same hospital, but she always lets everyone know that I'm 6 hours older than she.
Okay.
But we grew up in Carbondale, Illinois, which was the home, as we were growing up, of Southern Illinois Normal College. And it had an enrollment of about 1,000. And then after the war, the enrollment there mushroomed. I graduated from Carbondale Community High School, which was the local high school, and it included the county district. And my wife went to university school, which was at Southern Illinois Normal. By that time, it had become Southern Illinois Normal University. After graduation from high school, I spent 3 years in the United States Marine Corps, 14 months of which were in Korea. And then upon return from Korea, I enrolled in the summer of 1954 at Southern Illinois University. And from that point on, I went to school each summer for 7 consecutive summers. I graduated from SIU in 1958 and received both my master's degree and bachelor's degree in education on the same evening. I completed my 3-year undergraduate, or my 4-year undergraduate in 3 years, and then completed my master's. My father-in-law was a professor of educational psychology at Southern Illinois University, and he encouraged me to use my GI Bill, go to Indiana University, and begin work on a doctorate. And at that time, Indiana University had a unique program in that they had developed their own degrees in the area of health, physical education, and recreation. And their academic unit was titled School of Health, Physical Education, and Recreation. And the degrees at that time were physical education doctorate, health education doctorate, and recreation doctorate. And in later years, they added the PhD degree. Having completed all the coursework, completed all my comprehensive exams, and having had my dissertation topic approved in 1960, I accepted a position at Ball State Teachers College.
Well, let me stop you there for a minute. Did you have other possibilities of other institutions you might have gone to at that point in your life?
I mean, institutions of higher education.
Yeah, I mean, you say, okay, I came to Ball State, and what I've been asking people is, okay, you came to Ball State, but sometimes people interview for a couple of jobs, and they decide for one reason or another that Ball State is the place they want to go.
You're talking about employment.
Yeah, sure.
Right. Yes, we did. Again, through my wife's father's relationship at Southern, the director of placement was really very helpful when I graduated. And he set up interviews. We went to Homewood Fossmore in Chicago, and we went to Evanston High School. And Warren, I'm trying to think of, it's one of the schools in South Chicago. Anyway, there were 3 schools there in Chicago. The one in Evanston, they wanted a coordinator on elementary physical education. And one at Homewood Fossmore, was a physical education coaching position. And then the third high school was also, it was interesting because they wanted me to coach football and teach English. And I had an undergraduate English minor and had 60 hours toward the doctorate in physical education. And our last interview, we went to Chicago, went through those 3 interviews. Then the last interview was here at Ball State.
So this was the one college level position that you were looking at?
Right, and it's exactly what we were looking at, because when I did my student teaching, I did it with a former Marine, but also was a very close friend. And he supervised student teachers at University College. He was the head football coach there. And I made my decision what I really wanted to do. I wanted to go into teacher education, and I wanted to supervise student teachers. That was one of the reasons I came to Ball State.
Did you play sports in high school and college?
I did in high school. I played football. I lettered 3 years in football, 4 years in baseball, 4 years in track, and I played basketball for 2 years. But after that, I didn't make it.
But you didn't continue with varsity sports in college?
No, I didn't. Did not.
I mean, I asked that because of your long involvement with athletics here at Ball State, so I guess it's only part of the obvious to ask if you also had participated in varsity athletics at the collegiate level.
No, when I went into the Marine Corps, and in 1952 is when Shirley and I married. I still had a couple of years left in the Marine Corps. And so when I got out of the Marine Corps, she was teaching in Cahokia, Illinois. And she finished up her teaching there, and we moved back to Carbondale. And my first child was born in December of '54, and our second one in September of '56.
Okay. When you came here as a faculty member, what were your expectations of the role of a faculty member? Since one of the questions I'm going to ask you later that you experienced is how the role of a faculty member changed. But at this juncture in your career, you come to Ball State from Southern Illinois. What did you think the role, the life of a faculty member was supposed to be?
Well, I had somewhat of a preconceived notion because of Shirley's family.
Right. Oh, yeah.
With her father. I expected my role, to be a leader in the community, to work with young people, and to help prepare them to be productive citizens, and through physical education to help them prepare their bodies for a long lifestyle.
Okay. But when we think now of the faculty member who comes to Ball State today, and the expectations placed on him or her as a teacher-scholar, I mean, that concept really wasn't something that even occurred to you when you came to the Ball State of that period?
Not at all. Okay. At that time, it was coming to Burris. We had academic rank, but we did not have that expectation of scholarly productivity.
Right. So you saw this primarily in terms of today's model as an institution where you were expected to teach and provide service.
Correct.
And not be engaged in what we have come to call scholarly productivity.
Correct.
Okay. This gets all the way to the end, but then I'll go back and fill in some things. In your long and distinguished career here, why did you stay here? Because you probably had some opportunities to go elsewhere during the long time you spent at Ball State.
We did, Warren. But going back to that first interview, when we came to Ball State, because we met with John
Right. Didn't we all?
Right. Not only were we impressed with President Emeritus, but the community.
Oh, okay.
We really liked Munson.
Okay.
But when we left, Shirley said, this is where we want to be.
Oh, okay.
But having said that, we both said, now when I complete the doctorate, because I hadn't completed my dissertation and did not complete it until 64, we both said, when we complete the doctorate, then we'll probably look elsewhere.
Okay.
And that never happened.
Well, let me ask you more about that. Why didn't it happen?
We fell involved with the Ball State community,
Okay.
the Ball State family. It
Okay.
was, and that's what it was.
Yeah.
It was the Ball State family. We all cared, and it was much smaller.
Oh, yeah. Well, you mentioned the word family, and I know Tony Edmonds and Bruce Gill have talked a lot about that in their book on the history of Ball State being viewed as a family, with John Edmonds during his long presidency as the father figure of the family.
Right.
And that's certainly something that I think even in departmental units these days has been lost. And when I came to the history department, there was a great sense of community among senior faculty and younger faculty. And I think today, for a variety of reasons that we'll probably touch on in our conversation, that isn't as present as it was when you came here and when I came here.
Well, in '64, when I completed that degree, we had made the decision, and that's when we bought a lot, built a home, and this is where we wanted to stay.
Okay.
Now, having said that, in 1968, the dean at the School of Health, Physical Education, Recreation, and IU, John Enright, asked me to come to Indiana as the assistant dean for instruction, undergraduate education at the school. And I went down and interviewed. Shirley and I went down and looked at property. And when we came to the decision, our daughter was crying, Shirley was crying. And it was just a matter of that they wanted to stay at Ball State, and they wanted to be here.
Oh, okay.
So I called John and told him that we were going to come.
Now, this next question is one that the two of us could spend hours on, but I guess I'm going to have to ask you to look at the highlights of your career, and that is, in what ways did Ball State change while you were here? And then on the other side of it, you can go back and forth if you wish. In what ways did it stay the same?
Well, the two most significant changes, Warren, and I've looked at this through the years, 42 years here. The two most significant changes, number one was becoming a university. That changed Ball State University,
Right.
and I say that positive. It was a very positive move in terms of where this institution is today. And then the other would probably be debatable, but I believe that joining the Mid-American Conference was the next most significant change in this university. Because once we aligned ourselves with Miami and with Ohio University and with Bowling Green, and I mentioned those three, those were the top academics.
Right. Yeah.
Our focus, I believe our focus changed in terms of academic excellence and the scholarly, the teacher scholar.
Yeah. Well, I think since the two of us happen to be there at the birthing of all this, when it comes to the MAC, I think it put us in with a group of schools, especially the Ohio schools, where they had already become universities in the real sense of that term, and not, as I used to say about us, in our letterhead. They had faculty who were already expected to be teacher scholars. And so they had recruited faculty who had teaching responsibilities, but certainly had to make their mark in their published work and their grant activities. And that certainly wasn't the case here. So I think that was a great leap forward for us, although that change, as you are well aware, as a department head, didn't occur here until about a decade later. I mean, it really went through these changes in the 1980s when Jim Cook was the provost and Bob Bell was the president. Well, talk about those changes a little bit. I mean, here you are in School of Physical Education, and I'm laughing about this and remembering, one of the dramatic changes that took place was, of course, the separation of men's physical education and women's physical education, which I know was, so we say, somewhat of a struggle. Would you comment on that as being important in an area where you provide an awful lot of leadership, namely in the School of Physical Education?
Yes, I think that was extremely important. I think it brought together the resources of those two departments to strengthen the departments, rather than having those two departments competing.
Was the reason they were separate because that's the way physical education had been done in the past?
That was traditional throughout the country.
Okay.
I mean, it was Southern Illinois was the same way. Men's department, women's department, and it all evolved out of facilities, essentially. When they built what was then men's gym, we called it men's gym.
I do. I wrote the book on basketball and kept talking about that.
Warren, do you know that sign, the sign between the pool and the connecting tunnel? I found that sign was still up there, I'm going to say, in the late 90s.
Said men's gym?
Still said men's gym. I brought that to Tom Morrison's attention. But I think, as I said, it brought the resources together and really, again, brought us in line with what a university is all about.
Right.
And the same thing with intercollegiate athletics. When they split physical education and athletics, both programs benefited. Both programs took off. And I think that was another significant change in the university.
Well, I mean, you were an important part of a major decision on the part of the institution, that is to hire coaches who were coaches and who were not members of the faculty. As you well know, since we talked about this in the basketball book that I wrote with Tony Edmonds, that Bud Getchell is the last of a breed. He's the last person who really was a faculty member who happened to also have an assignment as, in this case, the men's basketball coach. Well, then we brought in coaches more in line with what universities did. And is it fair to say that you saw that as a real step in the right direction?
Yes, very much so. And again, I would say we patterned ourselves. Western Michigan was one of the first to do this. Joe Hoy was the athletic director at Western at the time, and he and I were in school together at IU. And they took that step. They hired their coach, and I talked with Joe, and he said, this is what we've done. We have a contract, a 1 year, a 2 year, a 3 year contract. They're not going to be responsible for a significant amount of teaching. And eventually we're going to base them on teaching. And you can look at the conference, Warren, and it's that way, the whole Mid-American Conference.
Well, I laugh about that because when Rick Majerus came here as basketball coach, one of the things he asked me to do for him as provost was to let him teach a course in the psychology department, the psychology of basketball. And I said, well, that might have happened 20 years ago, Rick, but I'll guarantee you it's not going to happen now. There's no way that the psych science faculty are going to let you teach a course. You aren't even a member of the faculty.
Right.
And he took great offense at that, but that was typical of Rick Majerus. Look at another angle of this from your position as a faculty member and department head. How dramatic do you think the change was to expecting faculty to be a different kind of faculty than they were when I came here and you came here? That is to say, you lived through a transition where you had to say to people, okay, now for getting tenure, for being promoted to associate and full professor, for being a successful candidate for merit pay, you are going to have a demonstrated record of scholarly activity. I mean, how did that play itself out in an area like physical education?
Well, it was a very dramatic change. And I think it played itself out somewhat through retirements.
Oh, okay. Well, that's a good point. I hadn't thought much about that, yeah.
And as those of us, who weren't expected when we came to be the scholars, when we made that decision, and that we hired new faculty.
Right.
They were told right from the beginning.
Right.
And, you know, what it did, Warren, again, it changed that complexion of the family.
Yeah.
And that I've got not only to teach, I also have service.
Yeah.
And I also have research.
Yeah.
And, you know, we brought in some very high-powered individuals
Yeah.
in the area of research, which brought a lot of recognition to the school. And I think they, well, like Costa, they had an influence on others coming in.
Costal, of course, was here, and even in the old Ball State, was still a significant researcher.
Correct.
So you had Costal, who really, I guess it'd be fair to say, lived by a different standard as a faculty member than the majority of his colleagues, because he was so research-oriented, and he was in an area that became the Human Performance Laboratory without any undergraduates, which was also pretty atypical for Ball State.
Right.
Let me go back a step on that, too. I mean, how did that happen with Costal? I mean, you had something to do with that. I mean, was it sort of a decision to leave Costal alone and let him be separate from what the standard was for the rest of the school?
Well, I was part of it, but, you know, the originator was Bob McCall.
Okay.
And Bob had, again, he had a vision, he was looking ahead, and he and Bud Ketchum knew that they needed to bring someone in. Bud was coaching.
Right.
That was his love.
Right.
But Bud knew that we had this area that was open, that could bring us the kind of recognition that Costa brought us. So Bob McCall was the one that hired Costa. And from that point on, after I replaced Bob, I think you described it very well. That is, you hire someone to do the job, let him do it, and that's exactly what we did. We turned him loose, and he, you know, he was very independent.
Yeah. Well, I think of that a lot because people like Dave Costal and John Beekman in actuarial science in the math department, Tom McComish in the fisheries area in the biology department. I mean, there were people here who were really doing quality research alongside an institution where the larger institution had faculty who weren't doing that much at all unless they wanted to. I mean, I guess in my department, the exception to that would be Dwight Hoover and some of the younger people like myself, but certainly it was Dwight who felt that he ought to be doing things that were more on a national scale as far as research, which is certainly the case with Costal and people like that.
Well, Warren, do you remember when we came, the publication of books was the exception.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyone, those who published books, they were really moving.
Yeah, that's true. That's a very good point. So that's a dramatic change then in your discipline, that faculty who were hired from about the, 1980s on, after Jim Cook was here and had a lot to do with changing his personnel policies, that you're hiring different kinds of younger faculty as the older people retire. So is it fair to say then that the way that physical education accomplished this was through retirements, through mentoring? I'm assuming you probably did a lot of that.
Right.
Absolutely. Do you view the changes that have occurred at Ball State as positive or negative?
I view them as very positive.
So you don't want to get into Division I football? I mean, don't you feel that still is a major challenge for the institution?
Warren, I do, and let me say this. The Mid-American Conference that we joined is not the Mid-American Conference today. And I don't mind being quoted on this. I think they've gone in the wrong direction. When we joined the Mid-American Conference, it was a broad-based sports program. And today, it's football and basketball. And
of course, you don't have women's football, so it's football and men's basketball. Do you think that's fair to say?
Football and men's basketball.
So there really aren't any women's sports in the MAC that might be reasonably compared to, say, UConn women's basketball or Old Dominion field hockey or something like that.
Not in my opinion.
Okay.
Not in my opinion.
Okay.
And I think, you know, this division, 1A and 1AA, is going to play itself out.
Oh, do you? Okay.
And it could very well be that many of the Division 1A schools are going to take a second look at 1AA.
Having been involved in this a great deal as you have been, do you feel that one of the problems for an institution to do that, especially a president and a board of trustees, is that you have an incredible number of alums who wear being in Division 1A as a badge, and that they would see, unless the whole conference went to 1AA, as a real step backwards, step down? I think it's a big public relations issue.
Yes, I certainly do. I agree. It's be very difficult to make that.
But and you can't do it by yourself. You got to have somebody, as we well know. You got to have somebody to play.
Right.
when you think of our short-lived romance, shall we call it, with the old conference that preceded the back with
Conference of Midwestern.
Yeah, your alma mater and
Northern Illinois and Indiana State, Illinois State.
Yeah, the Big Five, as
Right.
I often like to call them. Who are some of the people who were here or elsewhere outside of Ball State who influenced your career?
Well, I mentioned John Stahler.
Right.
I mentioned him as the ex-Marine. He went to Western Michigan. He was in the B-12 program and played football at Western Michigan. Then a person who had a great deal of influence was also, he stayed in the Marine Corps Reserve, and that was Bill O'Brien, who was at Southern Illinois University. He started as, he did a student teaching at Carbondale Community High School when I was playing football, and he assisted coaching. Then when he finished school at Southern, they hired him as an assistant at Southern Illinois. He was called back into the Marine Corps during the Korean conflict, and then there were six of us who enlisted in the Marine Corps. Bill was also our history teacher, so I would certainly identify him as one of the most influential people in my career. A person of very high ethical standards. He was an NFL official.
Wow.
And all of the money that he earned as an NFL official, he contributed to his church. Now, he ended up as the head football coach at Southern. Was not extremely successful. So he continued his education at Indiana University, got his doctorate in recreation, and ended up in the rec department. And so another person who was very influential was my high school coach, who was a graduate of the University of Illinois. And he was the Big Ten punting champion in 1941. He was also a person of very great integrity, knowledgeable, expected us to play, but also expected us to make our grades. So I think when you think of influence in my total life, my mother was certainly a great influence. She was from the South. She was from Memphis.
I'm sure she'd come up to the north.
She came up to the north.
Although I never considered Carbondale the north.
But she expected us to be gentlemen.
Okay.
It was yes sir, no sir,
Yeah.
no ma'am. And stood up when ladies came into the room. So I would say those are three of the most.
Were there any people at Ball State that you had special relationships with when you were here?
Well, Ray Lawson.
Yeah, I would have put him in there if you didn't.
Yeah. Ray and I had a very, very special relationship. I admired his success. I mean, he was, we were coming in as a teacher's college, and success he had with his baseball team, success he had with the football team, I felt that he was ready to take over the program and take it to the same level. I don't know, do you listen to WLBC?
Not with much frequency.
Okay, well, you know, they have Donald Trump on there.
Yeah,
every day.
yeah.
Well, his spiel yesterday was on management and success. And John Emmett used to say this too, Warren, and you'll remember this. You surround yourself with the best people, right?
I'm laughing because what John Edwards used to say to me, of course we were together when I started out with honors, and he had retired, we were in that house, now a parking lot, down near the College Avenue Methodist Church. And John Edwards' comment to me as he puffed out a big cigar was, never surround yourself with pygmies.
That's high job.
Yeah.
But that was my administrative style. And Norm Hiremeyer, after I left administration, Norm used to say, hey, why don't you let us do a right job? Just hire people to do the job and let them do the job.
Well, I agree with that.
Not micromanage.
Yeah. It's sort of find good people and let them do what they're best prepared to do. Yeah, I would agree with that. Tell me a little bit about some of your special areas of involvement at the university. And without putting too many words in your mouth, I want to get into issues like University Senate and things like that. So, focus a little bit more on the university as sometimes functioning well, sometimes functioning not so well institutional setting.
Well, having served as chair of the Senate, that was an enlightening experience, to say the least. But I really think it serves the university well. Now I'm not up to date on the new structure. I get the update, electronic update. But I think for the most part, I have a very positive feeling about the university Senate. I think it has functioned and served the students, it served the faculty, it served administration, and I don't know what this new structure is going to bring with it. And there's always going to be differences of opinion, and I think that's a great form.
Well, you lived through a lot of changes in the structure of what went under the heading of University Senate. I guess a more specific question I'd ask you, since you had some experience with this during your career, is as you look back, do you feel that the faculty had an appropriate role, had enough say, I guess, you might put it, in the decision-making process of the institution?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Again, my administrative style, I guess, or my feeling about Ball State is, number one, we hire the administrators to administer, and we hire the faculty to teach and service and scholarly productivity. But I think we give faculty more of an opportunity here than many other places.
Okay. Well, I ask it because the change that you're referring to, that you have looked at perhaps only tangentially, is to have a governance structure where there is more of a faculty senate, which we never had while we were here. The point being, I guess, that it would give the faculty a more specific voice and not have this voice diluted, as some would say, by the presence of administrators and students in the university structure. And I can see both sides of that. I never felt that the University Senate was able to give advice to presidents where you could say the faculty think this, because of course you had people like me when I was provost and you in different capacities, and the students voting on issues that might have been issues where you want to say, well, what do the faculty really think of this? Well, at Ball State you never really knew, for good or ill.
Right.
Well, that's why I mentioned it, because since you were chair of the Senate, I just wondered if you felt that body was able to give that kind of voice was able to give that kind of perspective to a president, since we both know what the University Senate does is just give advice to the president, and the president can decide whether he and how she wants to carry that advice on to the Board of Trustees or not. So you don't feel that was a problem?
I don't feel it was a problem, Warren, because I think the faculty voice was part of the overall picture. And again, I guess I look at the university as students, as faculty, as administrators.
Okay. What have been some of the areas you've been involved with outside the university? And here, I'd like to comment a bit on the Mid-American Conference, the NCAA, and anything else that might have been of interest to you in terms of life outside of the actual Ball State community.
Well, I would say, related to Ball State University, one of the most pleasant experiences was being faculty representative and being related, associated with the Mid-American Conference again, attending the conference meetings, the NCAA meetings. That was fun. There was work involved in it, but at the same time, the people with whom I was working they were really great faculty reps from the Mid-American Conference. And it was always interesting before they changed the structure of the NCAA, as you know, to go to the meeting and listen to Roy Kramer and Joe Paterno, Bobby Knight. Those were interesting days.
My favorite story is one of the years I went. I can't recall what city it was in, but it was with you and Ray Laupin, and I happened to be sitting behind Bruiser Kennard and Crazy Legs Hirsch, and Bruiser said to Crazy Legs, there isn't really anything here for us in this meeting. Let's go get a beer.
Right. Right.
But those are the kind of people you'd run into in the old way
right.
that they did those meetings. How do you view the relationship of the town versus the gown, the university and the community? Do you think it's the same these days? Do you think it's changed over the time that you've been in Muncie? But we hear a lot about that, and people on the university side are always talking about it, and people in the community are always talking about it, and I just wonder from your perspective, whether you think it's something that was one way when you came here and is a different way now?
Warren, I see it as the same. I've never really never had an experience where there was an antagonism because I was at the university and I'm over at the Hacienda or someplace on the south side of town. And people that I talk to at Muncie that aren't living here in the Northwest, they've never denigrated Ball State University. I mean, there's always the issue, as we're seeing now, parking. But I can't see that it's changed for the better or it's changed for the worse. It's still the Muncie community, and they recognize Ball State University as the number one employer. They know that we're vital to the community. But I don't sense any real antagonism. And again, having been at Burris, we played all the city schools. We went to Wilson Junior High School and Franklin High School, Junior High School at the time. Played at Southside High School, and I guess I just never felt that.
So you think it's been fairly consistent?
I think it's fairly consistent that it's I can take you to Carbondale, Illinois, where it was vicious as a university expanded.
Versus the community.
Versus the community. And that was a real town and county battle. But I have not seen this.
Do you think that Ball State over the years that we've been here has done enough for the community? I guess I'm asking the question because oftentimes city administrations and others would say to me, when I was provost in particular, well, you're not doing enough for the community. Ball State has all this expertise out there. You really ought to be giving us more of your expertise. And I always felt that we gave a lot to the community. And one time, John Worthen, while he was president, had all the vice presidents make up a list of all the things that faculty and students and administrators did to contribute to the university, in monetary terms, in service terms, et cetera. And the darn thing was 20-some pages long. It was just huge. And I think John Worthen's response was, well, okay, but no one will ever really give us the credit for that. They just expect us to do it. So I guess, as I said, the question I'm posing is, do you think that the university reached out in a sufficient way?
Yes, I do, Warren. And you read a lot about the College of Architecture.
Yeah,
all
right,
the
sure.
things that they do. But I know the things that the students do.
Yeah.
The volunteer service that
Yeah.
the students do. The numbers of faculty members who serve on boards, active in their churches.
Yeah, yeah.
And willing, at the drop of a hat,
Right.
to help in any way they can.
Yeah. Well, I've always
So,
felt that way, but I mean, people have different perspectives on this, and occasionally I'll get people in the community who will complain to me at one meeting or another that, well, we have this person or that person, and he or she really ought to be giving us more of his or her expertise, and it doesn't happen. So I don't know. I sometimes get a little bit, I'm a little bit taken back by that on occasion,
Yeah.
because I think that Ball State does bend over backwards to try to be a major contributor in the entire life across the spectrum of this university's existence to help in Seattle.
I would agree with that 100%. It's a bend over back.
Right.
The university has.
Yeah.
And it's a question of their, and many times it's a question of them wanting to accept it. And I think faculty and the university is sensitive to forcing anything.
I'm going to go back to almost the beginning before we conclude, because there's one thing other faculty have mentioned in my interviews that I want to try out on you because of your position as a longtime chair. Some faculty have said that one of the most dramatic changes in their years at Ball State was the change from quarters to semesters. Did that have much of an impact on school of physical education?
I think so.
Okay.
Yes.
How so?
Well, I'm thinking, Warren, just in terms of the students and their expectations
Right.
in the classes.
Yeah. Okay.
And
Were you in favor of that, by the way? Of changing from
Yes.
quarters to semesters?
Yes, I was.
Okay.
I was. And I guess one of the things that, one reason I was in favor of it was the turnaround.
Okay.
I mean, we start fall semester,
Right.
we're turning, we go 2 weeks, we take a 2-week break, we come back. The continuity.
Yeah.
So if it had come strictly to a faculty vote, I
Right.
would have voted in
Okay.
favor of semesters.
Yeah.
I guess it was the transition from quarters to semesters that was difficult. Faculty planning new courses
Right.
to
Yeah.
carry them
Yeah.
through a semester instead of a quarter, and the students adjusting, to being in class for 15 weeks or 16
Right.
weeks instead of 11 weeks and then exams.
But it wasn't really what you'd call anything terribly dramatic
No.
in terms of the curricular structure of the School of Physical Education.
No, it was just an adjustment.
In other words, just get on with your life, huh?
Right, right. Well, and the decision had been made, so let's go with it. Let's not go.
Well, I'm laughing about the decision because you may not remember the decision that the final University Senate vote was not to do it.
Right.
And the vote was something like 60-40, and John Worthen said, that's close enough.
Right.
And then went ahead and did it. But I always admired somebody who had that amount of, shall we say, administrative intestinal fortitude to say the Senate doesn't want it, but I think it's a good idea, so we're going to do it.
No, he said, thank you for the advice.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you for the advice. Well, is there anything else you'd like to add? I mean, as you look back, as I've said, on an illustrious and distinguished career at Ball State, not only serving the institution in many capacities, but also your work with the Mid-American Conference and the NCAA. Anything else you'd like to add?
I think, Warren, the 42 years that I was here, I had fun every day. When I say that, there was always something that was positive.
Oh, okay.
I mean, there were negatives,
Yeah,
but
sure.
On the whole, it was a terrific experience, and it was because of people.
Yeah, thank you.
And working with people like you.
Oh, well, that's very kind.
And you had the university's interest,
Okay.
the best interest at heart. And I felt that way about our vice presidents and our presidents, and that we were going to go in the right direction, and you all were taking us.
Well, I think
in
the
right
university,
direction.
as you pointed out, excuse me, the university is a community. And I think that you don't accomplish anything without having strong people at the department level, like yourself and faculty. But it goes back to your point that you made about find good people and let them do good things. And I don't care if you're talking about brand new assistant professors. You want to find good assistant professors, pre-tenure, let them do what they can do, as well as trying to mentor people through the tenure process and the promotion process and make them the best faculty members they can be, give them the best facilities. And as I look back, I wish we'd been able to accomplish more in terms of faculty compensation. That's come up a couple of times, as you could probably suspect in these interviews. And I said, well, as I look back on the time I spent with John Worthen, we certainly never solved that problem. And I wish that we had. I think that faculty here deserve to be compensated better. I think they've always had pretty good facilities, good working conditions. I agree with you that Muncie is a pretty good place to raise a family. But getting us into the Mid-American Conference, as you well know, put us in a different scenario in terms of faculty salaries. And
Right.
there's always a constant albatross hanging around the necks of the chairs and the deans and the provost and vice president, trustees, etc., because they knew that there probably wasn't any way they were going to get state of the game to support our requests for additional compensation for faculty. But even with all that said, I wish we'd been able to do that. And I think that's one thing we didn't accomplish.
But you know, Warren, again, going back, you remember we used to have a salary committee.
Yeah, we do.
And again, they were in charge.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I look at that this university has accomplished is our health care.
Oh, yeah, right.
I mean, that's unbelievable.
Yeah, I know.
In this day and age.
Yes,
And
well,
faculty did that.
yeah, I know that. Well, I'll tell you a great story. That shortly after I became provost, Joy and I got into the habit of having coffee at the Phillips and McDonald's on Saturday morning with Dave Shepard, Ed Struther, Alan Huckleberry, and Bob Robinson, their wives. And you know the kind of people that they were in the College of Fine Arts, but they were certainly pretty quick to tell me how I ought to be running the university, with, of course, a little bit of humor involved in their advice. But as their health began to fail, I have never seen people who, in their faculty lives, as active faculty, were very critical of a lot of things that went on at Ball State. But once they really had to draw on health care, all of a sudden Ball State became a whole different kind of place. And I just watched that happen over about a 10-year period, where now all of a sudden Ball State was the great provider of something they had to have. And that lesson wasn't lost on me. You know, as we age, the two of us, we think more about that than we might have 25 years ago.
Right.
But that's a very good observation. And I think it's part of the Ball State family thing. I mean, it's something that Emmons really wanted to do, and the faculty wanted to do, and they put that in place a long time ago. And it certainly has been to the benefit of people like us.
One other thing
Sure.
that I see the university, you know, becoming more of a university, and that's student recreation building.
Yeah.
And it's going to happen.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
eventually.
It will happen. But
Yeah.
that's going to be, or it is, it's another recruiting tool.
Mhm. Yeah.
But not only that, what that has to contribute to faculty and students. We went to IU Sunday to
Yeah.
see Maryland's youngest would play soccer. You walk up that path to the Armstrong Stadium.
Yeah.
To your right is a beautiful outdoor pool. Now, Indiana built that, or it's got to be 15 years ago, but they built it for summer school students, for faculty and staff. And they were one of the last ones in the Big Ten to build a student rec building, but they have that student rec building. Of course, Purdue was probably the first in the country to ever have one.
Yeah. Well, it's certainly a facility that we badly need.
Right.
No question about that.
And was very happy with the facilities that we had. I mean, we continued. We built the PHP building. We put in handball, racquetball courts. The field sports building was renovated. But that still isn't the same concept
No, that's right.
as a student rec building where it's 24 hours a day. And,
Yeah, we really lag our MAC peers
right.
in that regard.
Right. That kind of crazy
Yeah.
a little bit. Toledo's ahead of us on that.
Yeah.
Not Miami. They're going to have it anyway.
Anything else you'd like to add?
Just that I really enjoyed
Oh.
visiting with you, Warren.
Well, my great pleasure.
Haven't
This is
had
a lot.
this-
This is
haven't had an opportunity like this for many years.
it's a trip down memory lane for everybody. Thank you very much for helping me with my project. I really appreciate it.
Good luck on it, and I know it'll turn out to be a very productive.
Thank you.